Emily has been brainwashed by her own sister. Can you believe it? This woman has been extorting money from Emily, who's 10 years younger, every single month.
What?
Don't act dumb. I've made sure there's no way you can deny it today.
I was completely bewildered by this so-called reckoning, which suddenly took place at my sister Emily's wedding.
Parasite.
Parasite.
Shameless.
In front of me were Emily's fans and his parents, chuckling while ridiculing me, clearly enjoying themselves. Their voices were smug and dripping with condescension, as if they had found the perfect target to look down upon. Rushing over in her changed dress, Emily threw a statement toward the crowd, as though making an announcement.
You all know my sister, right?
The next moment, Ken collapsed. That's what happens when you act recklessly without doing your homework. I decided to teach him a lesson and slowly smiled as I began to speak. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm 43 years old. I haven't had kids or even married yet, but I have someone as dear to me as my own child. My younger sister, Emily. Emily is incredibly sweet. Being 10 years younger, I've always adored her, but after our parents died in an accident, I made a vow to protect her. At the time, I was 23, and Emily was just 13, a middle schooler. Emily, always cheerful and full of energy, was the kind of person who never stopped smiling. But for the first time, I saw her face filled with utter despair. And that image has been seared into my mind ever since.
Dad, Mom, I'm so sorry.
Emily. Our parents had been in a car accident while on their way to pick Emily up from tutoring. That must be why. No matter how many times I denied it, Emily blamed herself. It wasn't your fault. The truck driver was dozing off. How unforgivable. You didn't do anything wrong, Emily.
But if I hadn't asked them to pick me up, they would still be alive. It's all my fault. I should have been the one in the accident.
Emily, stop saying that. Dad and Mom always said we were the most important things in their lives. How do you think they'd feel hearing you talk like that?
Sarah.
Just as I had never seen Emily in such despair before, I think it was the first time she saw me crying and yelling. Emily, being so kind, stopped crying in front of me after that. Although I occasionally heard her quietly sniffling when she thought I couldn't hear, at least she stopped blaming herself.
From now on, let's do our best together.
Even with her red, puffy eyes, Emily forced a smile. She was so brave and resilient. Her strength inspired me to smile and stay strong too. We became each other's support. Before our parents passed, I had already moved out for work, but after the funeral, I decided to move back home. Thankfully, my workplace was within commuting distance from home, and I didn't want to make grieving Emily transfer schools. A 13-year-old living alone wasn't an option. As a result, it would inevitably mean living under someone's care. My grandparents, who lived in another state, offered to take Emily in, but that would have required her to transfer schools. I didn't want to add more stress to her already overwhelming situation. So, despite the longer commute, I chose to move back home.
But it'll take an hour to get to your office, right? 2 hours round trip sounds exhausting. Are you sure you're okay with that?
With a worried expression, yet always caring for others. Such a kind child. I'm fine. I'm a morning person anyway, but you'll have to help with housework. I'm counting on you. Emily's face lit up.
Of course. I'm good at housework, so leave it to me.
I was fortunate to have an understanding workplace. Everyone, including my boss and coworkers, considered my situation, minimizing overtime and weekend shifts. As a result, I often managed to come home relatively early despite the long commute.
Welcome back, Sarah.
I'm home. There's nothing better than having someone greet me when I get home.
What's that supposed to mean? Anyway, dinner isn't ready yet, so help me out.
Emily giggled as she pulled my hand, and the two of us stood side by side in the kitchen. Not a day went by without thinking about our parents, but we lived our days peacefully. Eventually, Emily went on to college. The money for her tuition and apartment was fully covered by what our parents had left us. I was grateful for how prepared they had been for the unexpected. At first, Emily wanted to apply for a scholarship.
It feels wrong for me to use this money all by myself.
But I went to college using the money Mom and Dad earned too, I said, putting an end to the discussion. Since Emily's college was in a neighboring state, we ended up living apart for the first time in years. I stayed at our family home, and Emily moved into an apartment near her college. Though I felt a little lonely, we kept in touch almost every day. Emily also came home during long breaks, so we quickly adjusted to the new arrangement. Later, Emily successfully graduated from college. She secured a job at a company far from our hometown.
I won't be able to come back as often, but make sure you take care of yourself.
That's my line.
You always push yourself too hard. And since you recently changed jobs, don't get too carried away. Got it?
Yeah, you sound more like the older sister than me. Emily puffed out her chest with a triumphant smile, looking as adorable as ever. We didn't contact each other as often as we used to, but we maintained a comfortable distance, focusing on our own lives. Then one day, I received an unexpected message from Emily.
There's someone I'd like you to meet.
The moment I saw the message on my phone, my emotions were a mix of joy, nervousness, and a touch of sadness. I might be 43 and single, but Emily was already 33. It wouldn't be surprising if she decided to get married. She had introduced boyfriends to me before, but this was the first time she had approached it so formally. And she was even planning to bring him to the family home. This has to be serious. They were probably in a relationship with marriage in mind. Just the thought of it made me so nervous that my throat felt dry. I quickly took a big sip of water from my water bottle. What kind of person had Emily chosen? I hoped with all my heart that he would be kind and someone who would make Emily happy. I imagined Emily's boyfriend, whom I had yet to meet. For our first meeting, I decided on a nearby Italian restaurant rather than our home. It was a cute, casual place that Emily and I had visited a few times before. I thought it would be easier to gauge the timing to leave from there, and it would be better for both him and me. If it were at our home, it would naturally become my and Emily's territory. For him, it could feel like a battleground. I didn't want to increase his nervousness unnecessarily. Since it's not like we'd have many chances to meet, I wanted to avoid a situation where we'd both be too tense to have a proper conversation. He might become Emily's husband in the future. I had to approach this seriously. I braced myself.
Sarah, this is Ken.
Emily, looking a bit stiff, gestured toward the man beside her.
Nice to meet you. I'm Ken Brown.
The man, Ken, introduced himself confidently. Nice to meet you. I'm Sarah Smith. I also introduced myself with a smile. If this man marries Emily, she'll become Emily Brown. I thought like that. Dressed sharply in a suit, Ken had an air of competence. He didn't seem nervous at all, even facing me. They had met at work. They were in different departments at the same company. According to what Emily had told me beforehand, Ken was 39 years old. 4 years younger than me, and 6 years older than Emily. For someone like Emily, who's generally reliable but prone to the occasional slip-up, someone a little older might be reassuring. He was great at steering the conversation and handled the ordering process smoothly. I felt confident that he could take care of Emily. He will protect Emily in my place. No, Emily and Ken will support each other and live their lives together. I completely trusted Ken. Even the bill, which I had planned to pay, was taken care of by him.
I recently got some extra income. Please, let me treat you this time.
His light-hearted tone and smile gave off a gentlemanly vibe. He also seemed considerate toward me. Thank you so much. That was delicious. Please take good care of Emily from now on.
Of course. I'm glad we got to meet today. Emily has told me so much about you. She said you're an incredibly reliable and supportive sister. I see now. It's clear from your demeanor. You truly look like someone older than me.
It felt a bit off, but I decided to take it as a compliment. Thank you. I don't think I'm that great, though.
Oh no, please don't be modest. Raising Emily on your own after your parents passed away is something I could never do. I mean, having to take care of a teenager in your 20s when you should be out enjoying life? Impossible for me. You must not have had any freedom. Wasn't it tough? If it were me, I'd have left it all to someone else like your grandparents or whoever.
Though he had only had one drink, his loose tongue and inappropriate remarks left me wide-eyed. I glanced at Emily from the corner of my eye. She maintained her smile but was clearly frozen in place. It was no wonder. The way Ken was speaking, it sounded as if Emily had been a burden on my life. Actually, I'm a homebody by nature, so I didn't feel restricted at all. I have so many reasons to be grateful to Emily.
Is that so? Well, I must say your skin looks amazing. You certainly don't look 43. Is that the result of staying indoors?
Maybe he wasn't a bad person, but someone really needed to teach him how to phrase things.
Well, when Emily and I get married, we'll come visit your family home. Since you're a homebody, it must be a hassle to go out.
Yeah, thank you.
Shall we get going? Sarah, I'll call you later.
Sensing my strained expression, Emily announced the end of the meal, and our first dinner meeting concluded. To be honest, I couldn't call him a bad person, but I couldn't call him a great one either. Those words and actions are probably Ken's way of trying to compliment me. However, I can't help but feel that, in doing so, he's neglecting Emily. What I want most in the person Emily chooses as her husband is for him to treasure her above all else. I don't want him putting Emily down just to flatter me. He's someone Emily chose, so I want to trust and accept him. But that wasn't the only thing bothering me. For instance, when Emily was talking about my work, this happened.
Look, this is it. Check it out. My sister's cosmetics. Right now, even at my company.
Emily, taking out your phone during a meal is bad manners, isn't it? Besides, since your sister is here, why not focus on more enjoyable topics? You can talk to her anytime. Let me have a chance to talk with her. That's just basic courtesy.
Oh, sorry.
At that moment, I couldn't jump in to mediate, but his tone had a sharpness to it. And his point about manners didn't warrant such a harsh comment. This wasn't a fancy restaurant. It was a casual Italian place where even families with kids dined. The atmosphere was lively, with many taking photos of their food. Besides, the food hadn't even arrived yet, so glancing at a phone briefly shouldn't have been a big deal. Looking back, I could have countered his remarks calmly, but I felt frustrated with myself for going along with the moment. Am I being overprotective? Amid these doubts, Emily called to thank me.
Thanks for today. Sorry about the weird atmosphere at times.
No problem. Thanks for dinner. Is Ken always like that? I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but sometimes he comes across as a bit overbearing.
Well, yeah, he can be a little like that. He's tough on others and himself. He's confident, you know? But I think he was just showing off a bit today. He's usually much kinder, so don't worry.
I see. Was Ken really the right person for her? I was worried, but Emily seemed to trust him wholeheartedly. No matter how many times I subtly checked in with her, her resolve didn't waver. Eventually, Emily met Ken's parents, and the two decided to get married. She's not a child anymore, so if this is her decision, I can't oppose it. I congratulated her with a heartfelt congratulations and watched her immerse herself in wedding preparations. Then came the wedding day. With no parents to stand by Emily's side, I acted as her guardian. In fact, the night before the wedding, I was overcome with emotion and cried by myself. Seeing her in her wedding dress made my nose tingle with emotion all over again. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, and then the reception began. Everything was going well, and I spent some time greeting familiar faces, Emily's friends and colleagues from her and Ken's workplace.
Thanks to you, we've been getting great feedback. We look forward to working with you more.
Thank you so much. Likewise. As the ceremony neared its end, Emily left for a wardrobe change. Shortly after, Ken stood up with a microphone.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today.
He delivered his opening remarks flawlessly.
All of you here today are irreplaceable to us. However, there are also ties that are unnecessary.
Unnecessary ties? As I tilted my head in confusion, Ken turned toward me, locking eyes with mine.
For example, a recluse who leeches off my sweet Emily.
Raising his voice triumphantly, Ken began striding toward me from the stage. When he reached me, he gestured with his chin for me to stand up. The staff around the room wore puzzled expressions. It was clear this act was something Ken had planned entirely on his own. I stood up, straightened my back, and stepped beside my chair. Ken smirked with satisfaction and raised the microphone to his mouth again.
Emily often spoke highly of her sister. She would brag about how her sister raised her in place of her parents and always put her first. At first, I thought it was such a beautiful bond of sisterly love. Well, I was completely fooled.
What is he trying to say? I shot him a glare, but to my surprise, Ken's eyes sparkled with excitement. After glancing around the room as if to stir up the crowd, he declared firmly,
Emily was brainwashed by her own sister. And if that weren't bad enough, this woman has been extorting money from Emily, who's 10 years younger than her, every single month.
What?
Don't play dumb. I've made sure you can't weasel your way out of this today.
The venue staff tried to cut off his microphone, but his relatives from the groom's side stopped them. Apparently, this speech by Ken had been planned with the knowledge of the groom's family. The hall erupted in murmurs of shock and confusion. Amidst the commotion, his parents approached with smug expressions. Before the ceremony, they had chatted with me as if nothing were amiss. But now it was clear they had planned to denounce me all along. Their faces showed no signs of hesitation or doubt. This was premeditated. Facing my stony expression, Ken's parents puffed out their chests and declared,
It's shocking enough to marry a girl without parents, but to also have a parasite like you tagging along is just unbearable.
The bride is already 33, no spring chicken, but you? You're 43, mooching off someone 10 years younger. How shameful. You're basically a leech.
A parasite.
A parasite.
They laughed gleefully as they mocked me. As I considered my next move, Ken raised his voice again from the side.
Exactly. By marrying Emily, I have to save her from this woman. Emily told me she's begged her sister to stop, but she won't listen. Honestly, it's weird for someone to still be single at 43. No wonder she's been leaning on Emily for everything.
I opened my mouth to refute, but Ken's amplified voice drowned me out.
Shameless.
His tone was not one of a man trying to protect his wife. It was the vile voice of someone enjoying their superiority. I should have trusted my instincts, I thought, sighing as I held my head. Just then, the doors to the venue burst open, and Emily rushed in, visibly flustered.
The staff told me, what's going on here?
Emily seemed to be doing her best to contain her anger. She stepped closer to Ken with a sharp, assertive motion.
It's gotten a bit out of hand, but it's for your own good, Emily. This is necessary to separate you from her.
What?
A massive, frustrated sigh escaped Emily, carrying an air of disbelief. She turned to her colleagues and bosses seated at their table, seeking their agreement.
You know my sister, right?
They nodded hesitantly, their faces filled with apprehension, while the groom's relatives looked completely bewildered. Of course, Ken and his parents were also dumbfounded. I offered them a professional smile, raised my tone slightly to match my work persona, and introduced myself. Hello, I'm Sarah Smith, CEO of Smith Cosmetics.
Smith Cosmetics?
Ken repeated weakly. As realization dawned, the blood drained from his face.
The major client of our company?
Ken stammered, his lips twitching as he struggled to speak. I gave him a bright smile and nodded. Ken and Emily both worked for a wholesale company specializing in cosmetics. I had started my own business after Emily graduated from college, motivated by my desire to create products that were convenient for busy people juggling work and childcare. Initially, the company ran at a loss, but word of mouth helped it gradually take off, and it's now thriving with increasing profits. A few years ago, I began doing business with Emily's company. With so many clients, it's only natural not to remember every CEO's face or name.
No, it's just, I didn't study enough.
Ken stammered, his face pale as he shot a glare at Emily.
Emily, why didn't you tell me something this important?
I did. You just didn't listen. Honestly, Ken, your brain only seems to process what's convenient for you.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
First of all, what's this about calling my sister a parasite? The staff told me. Care to explain?
Emily's wide eyes glared at Ken, her voice firm and low. Anyone who knew her usual sweet demeanor would be shocked by her transformation. Even Ken seemed taken aback by the fierce Emily standing before him.
I mean, I was thinking about you, Emily, for your sake.
What? How is misunderstanding the situation and accusing my precious sister anything for my sake?
But the other day, you told me you transfer money to her every month. She looked well off when I first met her, so I wanted to be polite. But then I found out she's been secretly taking your money. That's just awful.
See, you're only hearing what's convenient for you again.
Emily shot a cold glare at Ken, a deep crease forming between her brows.
I told you it's for regularly buying skincare products, didn't I? I've said so many times that I'd pay the full price, but Sarah always insists it's a sample and refuses to accept it. So, I started forcing the payments myself.
So you weren't being forced to send money?
Stop twisting the facts just to play the hero.
Wearing her beautiful yellow gown, arms crossed, Emily's anger was palpable. Now humiliated in front of everyone, Ken's face flushed red.
This all happened because your explanation was so confusing. Damn it. Wow. I just jumped to conclusions because I wanted to protect Emily.
Ken gives me a half-hearted apology. Was he really trying to wriggle his way out of this situation? That seemed utterly impossible. He scratched the back of his head nervously, forcing a sheepish laugh. His parents clapped their hands as if to support him.
Misunderstandings happen in marriage. Glad everything's resolved now.
Exactly. It's like they say, after rain, the ground hardens. To think the bride's sister is a CEO, truly impressive.
Their shameless flip-flopping was so blatant, it was almost laughable. But now that I'd seen their true nature, my next step was clear. Nodding along with their repeated declarations of relief, I spoke. You're absolutely right. It's much better to clear things up now than to regret it years down the line. The parents froze mid-motion. Ken's shoulders stiffened, and his eyes darted around the room. His face was pale, as if he might collapse.
What are you saying, Sarah? Emily and I will work things out, Anne.
Marriage is based on mutual agreement, isn't it? I don't think Emily has any intention of staying with you anymore. Feigning concern, I smiled sweetly at Ken, whose expression turned to one of despair as he stiffly turned to Emily.
That's not true. Right, Emily?
Marriage. No way. It's off the table. Completely canceled.
Emily waved her hand dismissively. Still clinging to hope, Ken pressed on.
You can't change your mind over something like this. Marriage is a lifelong commitment. Throwing it away over this is ridiculous.
Precisely because it's a lifelong commitment, I can't marry you. Right now, I'm just disappointed in my own poor judgment of men.
Emily's voice dripped with disgust as she furrowed her brows. I stepped beside her, patting her back. As Emily said, this marriage is hereby nullified.
This is ridiculous. You can't just humiliate us in front of everyone and expect us to accept it. If you insist on calling this off, we'll demand compensation for the humiliation and...
The one who stepped forward with heavy breathing was Ken's mother.
Yeah, and don't forget the cancellation fees for this venue. Suddenly canceling a wedding like this is all your fault, Emily.
It seemed they had no understanding of their situation.
What foolish parents and child.
Stop, Emily. You're in such a beautiful dress. It's not worth it. When Emily tried to retort, I placed a calming hand on her arm and stepped forward. You really are two of a kind, so short-sighted and shallow.
What did you say?
If anyone here has been humiliated today, it's me, being falsely accused and dragged through this absurd spectacle. What a nuisance. And all because of Ken's misunderstanding. Now you want to demand compensation? That's not just foolish, it's absurd.
No.
No.
The parents recoiled in unison as I glared at them. As a professional, I've always believed in separating personal feelings from work. But after this, well, I'm only human. Who knows what might slip during a conversation with my industry peers?
What do you mean?
As someone who's well known in this industry, it wouldn't be surprising if I casually mentioned this incident. Perhaps I'd talk about how your company employs people who don't listen, jump to conclusions, and publicize baseless accusations. If that happens, what do you think will become of your company's reputation? The room buzzed with murmurs, and hostile stares from Ken's colleagues turned toward him.
But what about Emily's position then? You're just bluffing, aren't you? No sister would be foolish enough to ruin her own sister's company's reputation.
I've always envisioned Emily joining my company someday, so I'm not worried. If I were the CEO of your company, I'd start by severing ties with you to repair its reputation. Even if someone is slow or inefficient, keeping an employee with poor character is a ticking time bomb. Who knows what kind of disaster they might bring in the future? I glanced at the company president, catching his eye with a smile. The president nodded and brought his hand to his mouth, seemingly lost in thought. Seeing this, Ken began to sweat profusely.
Wait, surely I'm not going to be fired over a simple misunderstanding, right? That's ridiculous. I only wanted to protect Emily. I meant well.
Well, that's up to your company's president to decide. I can't say for sure. From a work perspective, though, it's like a mid-level employee making a fool of himself in front of a large audience, spewing incorrect information just to stroke his own ego without properly listening, researching, or verifying the facts beforehand. There's no doubt about it. He's not worth keeping around.
Why did this have to happen on such a happy occasion?
Ken collapsed onto his knees, defeated. Despite the fact that he'd brought this all upon himself, he looked as though he had conveniently forgotten that fact. Crying into the floor, his wails of frustration sounded pitifully out of place for a man nearing 40. Emily looked down at Ken's pitiful figure and sighed with relief, muttering, "I'm so glad we didn't go through with the wedding. Well, there's no point in sticking around here any longer. Shall we head out?"
Yes, time for the bride to exit. Well, former bride anyway. Let's go.
As Emily took my hand and started walking, Ken suddenly bolted upright and called out her name, desperately clinging to the last thread of hope.
Wait, Emily. We loved each other so much. Please don't abandon me. Are you really such a cold-hearted woman?
His voice, heavy with tears and mucus, carried a raw anguish that might have been moving if Emily's heart weren't already frozen over.
No, you brought this on yourself. Stop acting like a tragic heroine. It's not a good look for a middle-aged man.
Her sharp retort struck Ken like a dagger. He clearly had no words to respond to that. For a moment, his mouth opened and closed, as though he wanted to respond, but no words came out. He simply sank back down, unable to even stand. My apologies for causing such a disturbance. Hand in hand, Emily and I left the venue for good.
Truly, we are so sorry.
After the ceremony, Ken and his parents immediately apologized, trying to mend a broken relationship. While his parents' motivations were clearly financial, it seemed Ken genuinely loved Emily. He was desperate to reconcile, going so far as to downplay his actions as a minor misunderstanding, a common miscommunication, or just a little mistake. Emily, however, wasn't having any of it.
First of all, I don't like men who squirm and make excuses. So let's just say we weren't meant to be. Good riddance to you.
Ken remained persistent, so I stepped in to deliver the final blow. If you keep this up, I won't hesitate to take legal action. I have plenty of resources, so I can pursue this for as long as it takes. At last, Ken's parents convinced him to give up on Emily, realizing that opposing me would only bring further trouble. He was a stubborn man who just couldn't take no for an answer. As for the venue cancellation fees, Ken's parents agreed to pay. I had expected some resistance, but they must have realized that crossing me wasn't worth the risk.
Our family caused enough trouble as it is. Please allow us to cover this expense. But we beg you, let's put an end to this here.
We deeply apologize for everything that happened.
Their humbled demeanor was a stark contrast to their arrogance during the ceremony. I later asked Emily about her work situation. After everything that happened, I couldn't imagine it wouldn't be awkward. "Why don't you come work for my company?" I had no intention of giving her special treatment just because she was my sister. But I figured offering her a lifeline wouldn't hurt. She turned me down with a smile.
People only gossip for so long. Besides, I'm the victim here. I have nothing to be ashamed of.
If Emily was determined to stay at her current company, then I had no reason to stop her. All I could do was support her decision. As for Ken, he resigned voluntarily. During the post-ceremony investigation, his statements raised several red flags. After a thorough inquiry by the company president, multiple instances of misconduct and dishonesty came to light. While none of his actions were severe enough to be criminal, the president decided he couldn't be kept on any longer. Ken's pride has made it difficult for him to find another job, and he's now surviving on temp work. His parents, having been hit hard by the hefty cancellation fees, decided they could no longer afford to support him. The incident was a hot topic for a while. But within 2 months, Ken's name stopped coming up altogether.
I'll find someone great next time.
Emily's usual optimism shone through, her enthusiasm for love undeterred. While her eagerness was admirable, I couldn't help but feel a bit anxious. Take your time, okay? And please, no more oddballs.
Yeah, I probably don't have the best taste in men.
Can't argue with that. The one silver lining in all of this was Emily's suggestion to wait until after the ceremony to officially register the marriage. Thanks to that decision, her legal records remained clean. The thought of Emily's pristine records being marred because of that man made my blood boil. Not to mention dealing with Ken and his parents during a divorce would have been a much bigger hassle. If Emily ever gets married again, I'll make sure she follows the same process. Wedding first, paperwork later.
If I meet someone new, I'll introduce him to you first, okay?
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Make sure you introduce someone to me too.
Emily clearly hoped I'd find someone for myself, but only time would tell. For now, I'd continue watching over her as both her sister and her surrogate parent.